Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick Donaghy, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. On this episode of Made to Measure, we are joined by Stephen Walter. Stephen is a powerhouse within the world of estimating here in Australia. Currently the National Estimating Lead of Bellweather Contractors, a civil engineering contractor who have been involved in over $57 billion worth of projects. Previous to this position, Stephen also held the role of Division Estimating Manager for Abbey Group, now known as Lend-Lease, as well as positions with John Holland, Pro Build Civil, and Lang O'Rourke. In terms of Tier 1 estimating, it really doesn't get much bigger than that. Alongside his professional achievements, Stephen is also a Chartered Professional Engineer, a Registered Professional Engineer of Queensland, and a Fellow of Engineers Australia. It was really great speaking with Stephen, and if you're in any way involved in estimating, you should get a little something from this episode. I really hope you enjoy it. So we're going to crack into it. This is Made to Measure. I'm Mick Donaghy, and my guest today is Stephen Walter. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephen.
Hey, no problem.
Do you mind introducing yourself just for the guests and the audience out there listening?
Yeah, so my name's Stephen Walter. I'm the estimating lead for Bellweather Consulting. I look after all the costs that come in and out of the company, whether it be tenders or consulting tenders for owners and other clients.
Excellent. So the reason I was pretty interested in having a chat to you, Stephen, you've obviously worked as an estimating manager and an estimating lead in many Tier 1, Tier 2 organisations, but I'm pretty keen to maybe just sort of take it back to the very start. How did you actually become an estimator and why did you become an estimator?
Just quickly, I guess there's a little bit of a backstory to it. I'm actually a boilermaker by trade. So I did my trade and a couple of years after that, 7 years, as a boilermaker, and did my time in Salisbury and Brisbane and realised it's not what I want to do. It didn't take me long when I saw half of the tradesmen that were deaf and blind and kicking the bucket when they were in their early 50s and 60s. I realised that the smoke and everything involved with that sort of a trade wasn't for me. So I got out and decided to change of vocation, and I'll just go through quickly, and then did a huge hospitality course actually, and I was living on the Gold Coast at the time as a young fella, and the opportunity came to work at Jupiter's Casino. Mm-hmm. So I started working there for about 2.5 years, and I ended up being a supervisor there in the showroom. Came out of that, realised that wasn't for me either. Got married, had a couple of kids, and realised then that I needed to find a secure career, and that I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I decided to go back to some sort of engineering, which is what I really loved. And as a mature age student at age 30-ish, I sat an access and equity course and got into the University of Southern Queensland doing an engineering degree. With my background as a boilermaker, but still as a civil engineer, I always wanted to be. So I just, for some reason, just took that path and always wanted to be a civil engineer. So I did my civil engineering degree, which took me 7 years as a mature age student. In my last year of uni, I got the opportunity to get a scholarship because it was pretty hard. We had a mortgage and 2 kids, and I was struggling to get through uni. We were getting $8,000 a year from the government to go to uni back in the day. I ended up picking up a main road scholarship at uni that they were offering. Managed to pick that up in my last year, and as a result of that scholarship, I got to work for Main Roads, and then I had an internship of about 3 years after I graduated. When I started with Main Roads, for some reason, they put me in the infrastructure delivery department, and my role there as a superintendent on some of the fairly big jobs at the time, I ended up slipping into the tendering department and the tender analysis process while I was at Main Roads. So like most engineers, the first thing you start with, you end up being an expert on. And that's really what happened. It was by default, I guess. So the projects I was looking after at the time were quite large. So I got a pretty good introduction into civil infrastructure, and then also moving on into doing the tender analysis. So while I was at Main Roads, at that time I decided I wanted to get out into the public, into the real world, not so much the public, and try my hand at contracting, working for contractors. So with my experience as a civil engineer and with my Main Roads experience, I picked up a job with a company called Basic Construction, which was owned by ProBuild Civil, bought out by ProBuild Civil. At the time it became ProBuild Civil after a while, and as their estimating manager.
I see a lot of engineers become estimators. What is it that being an estimator makes you so good at estimating?
Estimators, it's a real skill, because I think a lot of people don't like to be estimators because they don't like the responsibility of the constant handle the stress for a start. I think that's one thing. I'm fairly robust, and I can fairly broad shoulders in that sense, and I can take criticism fairly easy. A person who wasn't really fairly strong in that area probably couldn't handle a tender review. And for me, I really enjoyed that challenge. And I think you just become an estimator. Just becomes an estimator by default. I don't think so much you choose to. Like for me, for instance, I was in the tender analysis department of Main Roads, and that's what I started doing. So for me, it was a matter of just following a path course where I got most experience, and I liked it. The other reason I might add there is in civil engineering, I don't want to offend any civil designers out there, but the civil design world, where a lot of engineers can go into, doesn't pay very well. So project managers certainly pay well and can pay well, but you've got to put a lot of years of work into that experience to get to that pay level. What I found with estimators, because they're so rare, good estimators, is that you can make quite good money. I think it's that money path that you follow originally. Initially, for me, it was the fact that I could see a good career path in estimating more than I could in design or project management, for instance. Mm-hmm. Oh, and the other thing is I like to be in the office. I don't like to be out in the field. So a lot of people do like to be out in the field, but not for me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's quite interesting that there's no specific qualification that you can take.
No, there's not.
To become an estimator?
No. I think that may come down the track, and I've often thought about that with my experience over the years now, with 20 odd years plus experience. If ever there was a course or something to the universities would start up, I would really like an input into that, But yeah, you're right. There's not an estimating course as such to go and study if you want to become an estimator. So it is quite unique in that aspect.
So you've went on to very senior positions in big companies.
Yeah.
Stephen, what is it for throughout your time? How would you describe the difference between a good estimator and a great estimator? What are those qualities?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. In my experience, some of the very senior estimators that I've been under during my time used to always say to me that you can never price anything that you haven't built before. Mm-hmm. So they used to say, unless you built a 6-span bridge, or unless you built a tunnel, or unless you built, then you really can't price it. Well, that's not really true, because you can virtually build a lot of things as an estimator. You can sit in reviews, you can see jobs that have been built before, you can talk to project managers, ask them what went wrong and what didn't go wrong, and where the risks were and what you need to look out for. And yeah, I think basically it's all about what makes a good estimator. The question is.
Yeah, well, I asked this question actually to my network on LinkedIn, and I got a great response. It was quite interesting. There was so many different variables that you never really think about. One of the big ones for me was communication. There's this sort of maybe stereotype that most estimators are extremely introverted. Don't want to.
Yes.
Don't want to maybe talk to subcontractors. Don't want to get out there at maybe negotiating meetings or progress meetings or whatever it might be. Sorry, maybe tender meetings. But when I asked that question, the whole sort of communication piece seemed to be so important. Is that something that you think is quite important within the role?
Yes. And the irony is, you're dead right, is that most estimators are introverted. So for some reason, I don't know. But yeah, communication is. I wouldn't have picked communication as being one of the skills. It's really been able to, the skill for me, for a good estimator, has been able to build the job in your head. So be able to put that or communicate that on paper or on a software program in our case. I think if I went out to my team of estimators here, or most of them that I've had in the past, and looked at them and thought, are they good communicators? I probably wouldn't say that's their skill set.
Yeah.
Because they like to ferret away in the corner and punch out the numbers in the software and come out with an answer at the end of the day, probably not having to talk to anybody. So the communication part of it is done by what's called, the procurement team mainly. So you have, in a big estimating team, you have the procurement team that do all the communicating with the subcontractors, suppliers, and get all the information and ferret all that into the estimator. And he just sits there at his desk and puts all that into the program to build the estimate up. So it's been able to retain knowledge. It's been able to understand projects and get them into your head and build them as you're pricing them.
Yeah,
I think, and to be able to recall rates for different things pretty quickly is a skill as well. Someone's
good memory.
Well, yeah, good memory is one thing. Particularly in reviews, somebody in the review meeting will want to try a different option. They'll say, well, what about we use this type of pavement instead of that type of pavement? And you've got to be able to say, well, that's $50 a square metre less, or $50 a square metre more. You'll be able to think pretty quick on your feet. I would think is a pretty good skill set as well.
So you've been estimating, or within the estimating industry then, Stephen, for 20 years, I guess? Yep. Yeah. Have you seen it change much since you started?
No.
No? Is it done exactly the same?
Pretty much exactly. If I picked up an estimate from 99 and compared it with an estimate I'm doing today, I could probably use the same numbers, just change the labour rate, the material rate, things like that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very, very same. There's not a lot of science really that's really changed in terms of what we do as an estimator. Yeah.
And I guess technology and software hasn't maybe sort of developed it in any respect in terms of how quickly it's done or anything like that?
Still using the same program I was using in 99.
Gee, that's incredible.
There are really only 4 programs out there for estimating anyway in Australia. One of them was developed by Leighton and CATS, which is really well dropped away. So it's pretty much left 2 or 3 that are there. It's just one of those things that no one's really grabbed and tried to do better than what was already done.
I suppose that creates opportunity for some smart person out there.
Yeah.
If they can think of something, there's an opportunity to become an extremely wealthy person.
There is, but the old philosophy: if it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah. Also, there has been some that have tried to do that, I think, along the way, and the industry just hasn't embraced it. Matter of fact, the program that we do use did upgrade at one stage to what they thought a better platform, better version, or much easier for us to use, and we in the industry didn't embrace that either.
Yeah, well, that's I see it in the building side of things as well. There's BIM is like it's been around for 10, 15 years, and still people, companies and contractors are still building exactly the same way that they did 20 years ago. But what do you think what are the main challenges that estimators face nowadays then, Stephen?
Hi guys, the Takeoff podcast is proud to be sponsored by RIB Software, the home of leading construction software such as RIB CostX, RIB Candy, RIB CX and more. RIB Software provides solutions to manage all aspects of your construction project lifecycle, including estimating, collaboration, project controls and more. RIB products have been pioneers in the industry for many years. In fact, this year RIB is celebrating 20 years of RIB CostX. From the very first release of version 1.0 in 2004 in Brisbane, Australia, RIB CostX is now being used in over 100 countries around the world to help customers build better every day. And we have a special offer for listeners. If you take our podcast when purchasing an RIB CostX subscription in Australia or New Zealand, you'll receive a free online CostX training course. So visit the website now at www.rib-software.com. That's www.rib-software.com.
Wow, that is a good question. The way we do things hasn't changed. So therefore, we really haven't had to adapt. So adapting to new ways of doing things. The long hours is one.
Mm-hmm.
If the estimators, you're really, really busy for a couple of weeks and you're not doing anything for a week. So you've got that time where you can be working till midnight plus for 2 or 3 days in a row. So it can be quite taxing on time, and the stress levels that you get getting that estimate through the review process and eventually signed off, I think is always the main challenge for most estimators is that the long hours that you put in.
Yeah.
And maintaining your brain and your thinking capability during that process.
Yeah.
And not wearing out, not giving up, just having to produce that that final number at the end of the day. And I think that would be it. There's probably others, but I just can't think of it.
No, that's fair enough. I was speaking to a young estimator there probably last week, and it was quite interesting because he was maybe 20, 29, 30 or something like that, and he was saying to me basically how mentally draining it can be sometimes, and because you're basically that you're going to lose a lot of the time.
That's right. Well, that's right.
Yeah,
exactly. That's true. Actually, that's a good point. I've worked for Abbey Group or Lendlease now. I was the estimating manager there. I was John Holland. I worked for quite a few years in the department there, and Lang O'Rourke, and some of those big companies, and been involved in some big billion-dollar estimates. But pretty much across the board with most estimating companies, your strike rate's around 1 in 10. That's pretty general. So you're going to do 10 estimates, but only one of them is going to win.
Yeah.
It's just, you're selected tenderers or you're shortlisted and you're like 1 of 3, and then you get into about 30% and you're going to win 1 in 3. But most estimators in this industry are struggling.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so you're going to have some serious bounce back ability,
Yeah.
as I call it. Yeah, I call it a rubber arse. Every time you fall down, you've got to bounce back up again.
Yeah, that's right. And the recovery cost for the contractors is quite high because, if your budget is $100 million to spend, you've got to do $100 million for the tenders in a year. You've got to bid on $1 billion for the tenders to win that $100 million tender.
It's incredible.
So the cost, obviously you've got to pick up those costs for tendering because they don't get paid for anywhere else except for in the next tender you win. Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, that's one of the sort of the striking differences you find in estimating compared to any other role within the construction sector. You're up against it nearly.
Yep.
More so than obviously nearly 10 times more than any other position. And that particular individual that I have in mind, from what he had indicated, was that the company had won all the work that they needed for that year, but he was told to continue estimating anyway, even knowing that in his head that they weren't going to win. So you're basically essentially you could be doing nothing. You're basically still getting the same result.
That's right.
So it's definitely a career and a position that maybe doesn't get as recognised as some of the others. As I've said before, you don't see estimators cutting the red tape. On a big tunnel or a big bridge or whatever it might be.
I think you're spot on there, and my wife will tell you that. I don't know how many Christmas parties I've been to for the companies that I've worked for where we get the Christmas party and the managing director or the general manager will get out and talk about the success of the projects, and he'll rave on about the project manager, but I'll sit in the background and I'll be nudging her saying, see, I didn't get mentioned again. And she'll be like, oh, stop it, you don't, but you're dead right, so many Christmas parties I can think of where I've just grumbled in the corner thinking, there we go.
Yeah.
Didn't get a mention. No one even thought about the estimator, but the project manager, he gets a big pat on the back.
He gets it. But it's so interesting, isn't it? You know, I think though, having worked through a small part of the GFC, the recession back in the UK, you really see your worth of a really good estimator when you're seriously up against it, and you know you're tendering against twice as many contractors as you previously were. And now it's coming around that, you know, a lot of the clients that I'm speaking to are saying, you know, there's 5, 6, 7 more companies who are showing up to these site visits than you know 6 months ago. So you really see your worth of a really good estimator and the value that they can bring in during these challenging times.
Look, that's an interesting point too. I mean, we just did a tender. We did 2 tenders just recently, actually, and there were 16 tenderers. We haven't seen that sort of. I haven't seen that sort of numbers estimating a tender has turned up since I'm going to say 2004, 2003, 4 around that time. We used to have that, so we're back into it. Everybody is just so hungry at the moment, and the tender margins are creeping down and down and down to levels I've never seen before.
How do you cope with that mentally?
That's all right.
You're just used to it, I guess.
That's what I was saying before. You know, like if you're the sort of person that couldn't cope with continually battling away and losing and not able to cope with it mentally and physically inside and emotionally, you would never survive as an estimator. So we're just robots like that.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it happen so many times before, seen the industry change so much, you just, you know, you don't let it get you down. You know, the next tender, you pick it up and away you go, and you just put everything into it just like you have in the past. You can't let those sort of things get you down in estimating at all.
I don't think we're overly selling the career here to any young out there. It's long hours.
I didn't realise that was our goal.
long hours, no recognition.
That's it.
You're up against it, 10-1.
Can I say though that I have had many times in the past have particularly operation managers say to me, you know, you estimators are the most overpaid in the industry. So I guess I'm saying that, you know, you do get paid quite well as an estimator. That's pretty much general across the board. And so, yeah, that's probably the thing that does drive you is, you know, that most companies look after estimators.
Yeah, that's one thing for sure. I mean, working on the recruitment side of things, you do see, you know, some big salaries, but certainly the work that you put in, it certainly warrants it. Any young budding estimators out there, or maybe sort of graduates or engineers or anyone along those lines, you know, what are the positives about being an estimator?
I think I can say the biggest positive for being an estimator in my time has been particularly young project managers that have just got a couple of kids, that their wife is sick of them travelling around, which happens as a project engineer, and as you know very well. And they just want to settle down in one place, and coming into the estimating department is the best way to do that. I find that so many times you know, really to be a good estimator, you've got to do your 5 years out in the field anyway. That's pretty much part of the course. You can't come in as a graduate engineer and then start estimating and become an estimator. That just doesn't happen. So you've got to pretty much got to get your 5 to 7 years out in the field. And by that time, that young engineer will know whether he wants to do that and be out in the field and work on a project and build his way up to a project manager or project director, or whether he wants to just settle down in one spot. And it's usually the wife and family scenario that wants him, sort of encourages him to stay. And estimating is probably the only career in engineering where you can just settle in one place and stay there for the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah, that's actually a great point.
You do the odd site visit, travel around, in and around, but basically you're fixed. So that's what I'm saying. Most of the good young engineers that I've brought up through the years have been project managers that have just not wanted to travel anymore and wanted to settle down and stay in the office.
That's a fantastic point, and I'm thinking of plenty of people that I know, you know, have cut their teeth on engineering projects in the middle of doing inland rail or mining projects or whatever it might be, and certainly a great way to be home and be around family.
Oh, definitely. And it's a great transition too, you know, getting their skill set and using them in a different way that they hadn't thought before, maybe even, you know, like, yeah, I've built that bridge, or I've built that road many times, but to be able to bring that skill set that they learned out in the field into the office and then be able to put that down on paper and price a job like that, they do get a good sense of satisfaction out of it. Most of them do. Then they've got to find out with it, all the other things we talked about. Can they do that 10 times and only win it once?
Yeah, yeah. It's true, but I think that's a great point, and one you've maybe underplayed there as well, Stephen. The why you need to have those years of experience out on site.
Yes, that's right.
Would you say it's crucial?
Guys, I'm interrupting this podcast today to give you some information as to what I actually do every single day. So I own and operate a business called Get In Executive Recruitment. We're a specialist boutique recruitment company, and we specialize purely in the pre-construction and commercial construction markets globally. We're really well known, respected for our work in estimating, cost management, quantity surveying, and contract administration. Because we're hyper niche, we don't have millions of candidates. We don't really even have thousands, but more times than not, we have the right candidate for the right job at the right time. Unlike a lot of recruitment agents out there, we are super experienced in what we do. We understand the market, we understand what makes our clients tick, and our candidates tick too. Each and every single assignment we work on undergoes an extensive executive search process. It's robust and it works 100% of the time. We've also got a team of 5 researchers who map our markets out globally within our niche. They're amazing. They allow us to work fast, which saves our clients time and money too. So if you're interested in our process, drop us a message. Now back to the episode.
Yes. Pretty much crucial. Yeah, to have that. There are some people that just are some young engineers who just want to be estimators. That's just set in their mind. That's what they want to do. And I always say to them, you're no good to me until you've been out in the field. You're really not.
Yeah.
You can't come in here and start estimating and not know what a gully pit is. Or you've just got to be amongst it and part of it and kick the dirt and eat the dust and have all that experience out there before you can come into the estimate bar. It is definitely crucial. Very rare.
So if you're a young graduate out there and your goal is to become an estimating manager or a senior estimator or something along those lines, get out, get some experience, get on the site.
Yeah. Forget about even trying to come into the field without. It's very rare to get less than 5 years experience and come into estimating. Pretty much got to have that. And if you get the 5 to 10 years. Oh, some of the companies that I've worked for actually will have the project engineers and the project managers come into the bid team and work with the bid team and then go out and build the job once we've won it. That's a philosophy with some of the companies, and that's great too, because that way they get they get both exposed to both parts of the process, and then they might say in the end, well, look, I just want to stay in the estimating department now, and they tend to be really good estimators because they know what it's like after they've bid the tender, then to go and actually build what they said they could build it for, which tends to be always the issue with estimators having to deal with the project manager once we've won the job, and they say, well, there's no way I can build it for that.
It's the old classic, isn't it?
Yeah, the old classic. I mean, you never hear from the project managers when the job goes well and there's some fat in it, but you always hear from them when you've made some errors or you left something out.
Oh, I'm sure. Just one other thing as well, that to finish it off, Stephen. Yeah. So I noticed that you've done a lot of upskilling throughout your career. You've done a lot of professional accreditations. Is there anything that you particularly that you've studied, or any of those memberships that you've went through that you think has been pretty beneficial to estimating?
Yeah, look, I would encourage any young, and I did from my very first, as soon as I graduated, started doing my career path to become a qualified engineer and get my RPEQ. It's what I always wanted to be. The rest of the things, all the that you do is pretty much just add-ons to that. Becoming a fellow member of the Institute of Engineers and all those other things. I think really, if you're going to be in the consulting world and working with government organisations and doing estimating for them, it's pretty much a must-have. You've just got to have those credentials after your name, or else you're not recognised as an engineering estimator.
Oh, really? So if you're going for, say, big road projects, big rail projects, it's basically compulsory
pretty much
to go through those engineering accreditations.
Yes. The state governments are now requesting that if you're working on some of those big projects like that you need to be an RPEQ. Funny enough, but I get it in a way too, because they want to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck and they're getting somebody in there that knows what they're doing, and at least if they can prove up their accreditation as a civil engineer and they're estimating at the same time, then then they get there. No, they get at least they've covered those risks of having someone not know what they're doing, pricing these big jobs. So yeah, it is becoming more and more nowadays that you need the accreditations. RPEQ is probably the big one, and I think every engineer should aspire to becoming an RPEQ in the first 3 to 5 years of their career. Anyway, I think that's just a part of it. I think just do that.
Yeah, there should be someone from the RPQ or RPEQ.
Yeah, Registered Professional Engineer of Queensland.
Okay.
So Queensland, it's only Queensland really that has at the moment. I think New South Wales have now picked up something similar. Victoria as well, they're following suit. So the Registered Professional Engineer of Queensland, I think, personally, should be compulsory for all engineers.
Yeah.
No matter where you work.
In terms of the people that I speak to within the industry, there's so many of them are maybe sitting in that position, may have sort of 10 years experience and want to go through those.
Yes.
Professional upskilling to set them apart from maybe others on the market. And I think it's extremely worthwhile hearing that right now when there is a pandemic, when there's more people looking for work. Yeah. That's how you set yourself out, maybe from another individual.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
sets you apart, yeah. And look, the other thing is too, that if you've got 10 years experience as an engineer, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's a lot easier to get your RPEQ because you get a lot of accreditation for years of experience. And you really just got to show references or whatever, or let them convince them that you've done your hard yards and you know what you're doing. Whereas, earlier in the piece, you've really got to follow a process and have a mentor, and it takes you a lot longer. So
a lot longer.
A lot longer, yeah, and it's a lot harder as well. You've got to prove up, to do sort of assessments and get them signed off by your mentor. But if you've got your experience, you're 10 years or 15 years engineer, you'll be surprised how easy it is to get your accreditation. Once you pay the dollars, and you've got to go and convince them that you know what you're doing, and you get a lot of accreditation for life skills and experience that you've had in the past. What you do, you've got to let them know what you've done, and it's quite easy. It made it a lot easier than it used to be, put it that way.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. Just to finish off, then Stephen, is there anything you're particularly looking forward to over the next sort of 6 to 12 months? I guess, like everyone, you're looking forward to this coronavirus going away and everything getting back to normal.
Oh, look, there are some big projects coming up. It's quite funny, my wife thinks it's quite funny that I get excited about construction projects, but I just can't help it. It's in my blood. But, even I went to a presentation yesterday, for Cross River Rail, and just incredible the work that's going on in Brisbane at the moment, just opening up holes everywhere in Wollongabba and at Bogger Road for these underground stations. And so, really getting really excited to work on, we're getting a chance to work on those sort of big projects like that.
Yeah.
Really love those projects. But what I'm excited about, I think, is the stimulus package that the government's going to be putting out because of this coronavirus. And they've promised some big projects to release them. We haven't seen them all yet. We don't know exactly what is coming out. But I think that's what's exciting me. I'm hoping to see a big flux of not so much the shovel-ready projects that will go straight to the contractors, but the ones that are in the planning stage that'll come to us as well. We do a lot of work for the design houses in the planning stage and the business cases. Looking forward to some big projects coming out in the next few years in that part of that stimulus package. I think that's probably it.
It's great. It's great to see the government has responded, and certainly there's a lot more optimism within the infrastructure sector than there currently is within the building sector.
Oh yeah.
So I guess you'll find a lot of typical site engineers and project engineers trying to make that transition across on the big roads and rail projects over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, hopefully they will come across. Yeah. I mean, you can see it happening with the building industry because, what's happening is a lot of the office spaces around Brisbane at the moment are empty. So they're not going to be building a lot of office space buildings, or if they had them in the projects, they're probably going to put them on hold for a while because they can't lease out what they've got already because people working from home. It's just changed the whole industry on that building side, Whereas, the transport infrastructure, nothing's changed. Matter of fact, it's probably got busier, if anything. So we're very lucky in that transport civil infrastructure space where coronavirus hasn't affected us. We're almost becoming an essential service in that aspect. So it's a good place to be a civil engineer at the moment in the civil infrastructure space. I think.
No, I agree, and I'm sure there's plenty more who agree with you as well, Stephen. But just to wrap this up, if there's any sort of engineers or estimators out there who might want to maybe connect with you, to ask
definitely.
you a few questions, is the best way LinkedIn, or what's the best way to contact you?
So LinkedIn, and on our webpage, Bellweather webpage, there's a section there to careers section where you can apply. As a matter of fact, only just yesterday or the other day, we had somebody, a young estimator, hop on our page and put her CV across. It went over to our other department and came across to me, and they said, look, this person's just advertised on their webpage. Great CV, great person to meet. So I'm just going to catch up with them next week, have a coffee.
Excellent.
So we're always, most estimating departments are pretty much always looking for estimators. We mightn't have a space for one at the moment, but we'll get busy and we'll need to put one on, or just always on the lookout for good estimators. That seems to be the message, I think.
Yeah. So if you're an estimator out there, get onto the Bellweather careers page, get your CV spruced up, and get it across to Mr. Walter.
Yep. Keep it down to 2 or 3 pages. As an old saying, you know more about that than I would, but they reckon that once you get past the second page, you don't read anymore.
I seen an 18-pager today. The guy described, he told everyone the names of his children, how long he's been married, where he met his wife, everything. So down to 2 pages, you're all good. Yep.
I must have looked at 1,000 CVs over my years, and not as much as you, of course, in your industry, but I generally always just look at, funny enough, I don't look at the age. I very rarely look at the age or the name so much. I just go straight to the experience, like the little blurb at the front, which tells them overall, and the companies they worked out and the roles they had in those companies. To me, that's the main thing. And if I don't see enough experience that I'm looking for in that first 4 or 5 minutes of scanning CV, I might just put it down and go to the next one.
Yeah, well, that's it. The average person reviews a CV for about 7 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you've got an 18-page CV, no one's looking for War and Peace. You're looking for 2-3 pages max.
Yeah.
And if you're an estimator, especially, you don't need anything other than a number of your projects you've worked on.
Yep.
And your responsibilities on those
right.
as well. Thanks very much for doing this, Stephen.
No problem at all, Mick.
See you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Made to Measure. I really hope you enjoyed the podcast. This is the only podcast in the world that focuses on the niche area of construction costing. Therefore, as an independent podcast, your support is invaluable. Please like, share, screenshot, give a review, or just tell your friends and colleagues about the show. The more people that know about the podcast, the better the guests that we can bring to you, and the better the content you will consume. Thank you for joining me. I'm Mick Donaghy, and this was Made to Measure.
Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.